Welcome back to another episode of Marvel News Desk, your best place to keep up with all the latest news, reviews, and speculation concerning Marvel films and TV shows. We have our usual panel as normal, which means, usual, normal. We're even being redundant today. We've got Adam.
Very redundant. What's up, guys? Adam Barnhart. Twitter at Adam Barnhart.
And chowing down, we've got Rhiannon.
Hey guys, you can find me on the Twitter as Brooklyn Wallace, at BrooklynMND.
And I'm Caleb Borchers. You can find me on Twitter at Caleb A. Borchers. We want to encourage you to subscribe to us on YouTube at watch.marvelnewsdesk.com. Also check out the second podcast in our Marvel News Desk family. That's AP Marvel. This week I think will probably be part 2 of their deep look at the shared universe model and how that has worked out for the MCU. I've got a lot of stuff here at the top of the show, so I'm going to try to get through it quick. First of all, content-wise, I've been out of the loop, but you guys have been doing some really fun new kind of videos, right? You found some new ways to give people our stuff?
I haven't done any of it. I haven't been doing anything. I'm kind of out of the loop, too. That's all Rhiannon.
Rhiannon's life has been sucked away by making little snippet videos of our podcast. So what I predict is that you'll see like tons of them this week and next, and then I'll never make them again.
But it's cool. It like kind of transcribes what we're talking about as we're doing it, right?
Yeah. So I'll post little snippets so that people can see, what's interesting this week. Why should I even bother listening to the podcast? And it has like transcriptions. So if you're like me and you're on Twitter at work and you don't want to listen to it, it provides some transcription, probably very poorly edited because I suck as an editor. But yeah, some cute little snippets. So a lot of people were really interested in our Chris Brewster interview. So if any of you guys still haven't listened to when we had Chris Brewster on the podcast both times, you should go back and check that out.
Yeah, if timestamps are still too difficult to navigate, this is even easier. You just go to the one you want. So check out our Twitter and I think at least Twitter and Facebook, social media, and you'll see where we post these kind of things. Also, I'm starting an MCU rewatch with my oldest kiddo, and I'm going to do a video series about it, but I still can't make up my mind what I want to do. So if you're one of our listeners and you have an idea of what you would like to hear out of a video series about an MCU rewatch, tweet at me, Caleb A. Borchers, tweet at the show, Marvel News Desk. I would love some tips on that, because I'm still not sure exactly where I want to go with it. So, also, there's a couple things I want to mention up the top of the pod. One of them I became aware of last week, and I talked about a little bit on Twitter, but I wanted to take a second to mention it here. I was listening to Collider Heroes, and Ashley Robinson was on there, and she talked about this cool program they are doing with Operation Gratitude to send comics to American military families. So if you're one of our listeners here stateside and you would like to do something kind of to support the troops, and to me, even more importantly, to support like kids of military people who are all around the world, this is a really cool program. The best place to look at it, go to Twitter and check out at Ashley V. Robinson. She's pinned her tweet at the very top of her page. Explains all the details on how you can donate, but the idea is it's real simple. You can get one of those medium flat rate boxes from the post office, and you can buy a bunch of comics or take a bunch of lightly used ones you've got at your house, toss them in the box, put them on the address that they ask you to put it on. They ask for like PG comics because it might end up in kids' hands, and you can send comic books to kids and of military people and military people all over the world. And it's real simple, real easy to do, and it's just kind of a way, particularly with Veterans Day happening this week, it's a cool way to kind of say thank you to those kinds of people. So I thought that was really cool. You can check that out. It's super easy, and I thought it was fun. It's also a way to share your Marvel love, make sure that kids get lots of Marvel comic books in their hands. That's pretty cool. So I want to mention that. And also, I didn't really want to talk about this in the news, but if you have not heard, during these California fires, Scott Derrickson, director of Doctor Strange, has lost his home, as have many, 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 many people in California. And so our condolences to Derrickson and his family and to everybody else who's dealing with that stuff. And if you wanted to donate money to like the LA Fire Department or some of these other people dealing with these disasters, that would be awesome and that would be cool because that is a really stinky thing that's going on.
I mean, let's face it, this podcast is going to be a whole lot of down.
It is. It's not going up from here. No, the news. The news should be fine. I think the news will be all right. As Rhiannon mentioned, we are going to talk about Stan Lee as our main topic today. We won't put it in the news because we'll talk about all that at the main topic. So let's first of all jump into the news. And I guess this is somewhat sad news to me. My Mouseflix idea is not going to make me a billionaire. Marvel is not, Disney is not going to pay me for that name because they've decided on Disney Plus as the name of their streaming service. We also got, people are calling it confirmation. I think we really knew that it would definitely get in a Loki show and it definitely had Tom Hiddleston, but Disney mentioned that on their earnings call as something that's happening. I did find it interesting that the Scarlet Witch show and the Bucky Falcon show were not discussed on the earnings call. I guess they're just keeping it brief. What do you guys think of Disney Plus as a name? And was there anything else from that earnings call that you thought was interesting?
You gotta have the D word in the forefront, man. That's gotta be in there. I thought it was Disney Play, but no, it's not Disney Play. I mean, it sounds so corporate-y. It sounds startup-y and all that stuff. In terms of Loki, I think places are calling it confirmation because this is the first thing Iger's actually said, or anyone for that matter. And you kind of talked about that itself. He did bring up Scarlet Witch and Vision or Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, and then Hiddleston posted on Twitter like the very next day the little tease or something about more stories needing to be told.
I'm still super hyped about a Loki series. Disney Plus sounds like a... I mean, let's face it, they could call it anything. I mean, Disney Channel was already taken. Disney On Demand is too boring. They needed it to be something simple. But, I mean, Disney Plus is a pretty boring title. Not going to keep people from watching it.
Yeah, that's totally true. The ESPN, their service that they've already created is called ESPN Plus. And so I guess it makes sense from a branding side. I never thought about it, but Hulu's got a Hulu Plus too, don't they? Isn't that what they call their like premium version or whatever? So, as you said, it's all about the content. They also announced there's going to be a Cassian Andor show for Star Wars, which if you are not a big Star Wars fan, you're probably going, who? And yep, that's pretty much how that goes. So, I'm interested to see how deep they can go. I mean, I think on the Star Wars side, I'm already feeling like, I don't know if I care about that. So I wonder how many of these shows they can create on this for Marvel before it's going to feel like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. But thus far, I think we're excited.
I mean, you essentially write yourselves into a corner when you do these prequel things, right? Like, you know how this Cassian guy kicks the bucket and you knew Han Solo kicked the bucket? I don't know. Then again, I'm a bit demented and think things don't carry weight unless someone dies.
You know, you say that, but all the Marvel shows are for characters that are dead currently, too. So that's kind of interesting.
But, I mean, Scarlet Witch and Vision are coming back. You know, Falcon and Winter Soldier are coming back. I mean, Loki, that doesn't necessarily have to be a prequel. And if it is, I've already crap-talked the Loki series anyways, so...
All right, going on to our next bit of news. We'll see if Adam can behave himself on this. Over the weekend, we got some concept art that I just made quotation marks for Avengers 4, which showed quote-unquote quantum suits for the whole team. There was immediately much vigorous Twitter conversation about how real or how fake these are. Rhiannon, let's let you open us up, and then Adam can start to charge himself up for what's coming. What did you think of these quote-unquote leaks?
So I was a little tainted because I never even really saw the pictures. I only saw everybody's outrage over if they were leaked, if they were fake, if they were real, what they were. So I think it was more interesting to watch that unfold than looking at the pictures themselves. When I saw the pictures, okay, they're in quantum suits. Meh. I kind of enjoyed the drama more than that, which I think might be a bad thing. So let's just get straight to Adam's thoughts.
Yeah, Adam, give us drama, man. What are you thinking?
I was just going to say no comment. I don't have a comment on the scenario. It is what it is. People think they know what they're talking about, you know. But I don't. Let's say this: if these white quantum suit pieces of concept art are real, I need to find out how to become a concept artist at Disney, because these are very, very bad Photoshops at best. Like entry-level Photoshop work at best. And if someone got paid to do that as a concept artist, sign me up.
Yeah, my immediate thought was these are not real, because they just look weird. The weirdest one to me is Iron Man. Like, the idea that Iron Man would have a red and gold suit, more or less, with the exception of some of the different Mark suits that they had in Iron Man 3, right? But, like, generally speaking, they've never taken him out of the red and gold. And the idea that, like, he would like be in this quantum suit that's all like red, white, and blue, and then keep the red and gold helmet on top of that seems really dumb to me. Like, it just doesn't look like anything Stark's created before. His nanotechnology would seem capable of handling going to the quantum zone, I would think. And then beyond all of that, the helmet is very clearly an earlier Mark helmet. Like, they made some important aesthetic decisions that I didn't realize till this weekend when I started, like, deep diving this. But the shape of, like, the red, I keep calling it the Widow's Peak because I don't know what else to call it, but, like, where the red comes down on his forehead, that shape is very different in Infinity War than any of the previous stuff. And also in Infinity War, the red on the sides of his mask come all the way to the corner of the eyeballs on the mask. And that's both in Infinity War and in the what we know is real Avengers 4 concept art. So the idea that all those have that helmet, but this is real and it's got a previous helmet from like three suits ago, seems dumb to me. Like, I just don't think that's super likely. I think it's far more likely that somebody saw a toy leak from Thor and Rocket Raccoon that may be real, and they're like, oh, what if we did it for everybody? And so they Photoshopped themselves up something to get themselves a little, like, 2 seconds of internet fame. And that's my guess.
Who would try exploiting the internet for a brief stint of fame? No one ever, right?
Gabriel Luna. That's who. No, sorry, that's not fair, Gabriel. Sorry. I was just reflecting the other day about how Ghost Rider, like, he was like, oh, it's going to happen. We're going to have a TV show. Come on, tweet at me. Get it happening. And nothing's ever happened with that character.
The thing is, even if this concept art is real, then it doesn't mean that it's going to show up in the show. I mean, in the movie. Like, we've seen plenty of times after the movies come out. I mean, let's just say if it is real, which... unlikely, but if it is, there's plenty of times that after the movie comes out, there's tons of concept art of things that they considered but didn't do. So, I mean, even if this concept art is real, it doesn't mean we're going to see it in the movie.
Right. It sounds like you just gave someone an excuse to use on Twitter once it ends up not being real.
Oh, that's, you know, like, here's the thing. At this point, we have some folks on Twitter who have been real, like, ridiculous. Like, nope, I know it. This is real. This is definitely gonna be the title or the time that we'll get the trailer, whatever. And I'm just saying, if you play big like that, when you're wrong, I just hope that they take it on the chin and are like, yep, I got it wrong. Like, if they're gonna be like, well, it was gonna be used, but then because it leaked, they changed it. Like, don't give me any of that, you know? Like, if that's the way you're going to be, don't be all, like, you know, bravado-y and strutty, so.
Well, and the reality is, I mean, we know this. We know this has happened to previous news outlets. we know that sometimes Marvel is watching. They know what's coming out in the news. And we know they occasionally feed bad information. On purpose.
Well, and they do change. I mean, like, I remember back, I think we can talk about this at this point. I mean, we knew people that saw audition tapes for a Shang-Chi role in an Iron Fist.
Yes.
And we know that at some point, somebody somewhere either chose not to put that character in the show or was denied access to that character or something. But they weren't, like, auditioning actors for that role just for kicks and giggles, you know? Like, things do change. That's fair. But I'm just saying, the more and more heavily you're like, this is right, the more and more you deserve to get called out on it if it's not. That's all I'm saying. All right, that hashtag show this week released some character rundowns for Black Widow. And at this point, those guys, I feel bad for those guys because they have done so good at predicting characters with their character breakdowns that Marvel is not putting any content in the character breakdowns anymore. I mean, they got them, but it tells us so little. It tells us the main villain will be a character in their 40s, a man, and the character will be, quote, exciting. So good luck trying to guess who that is. They sort of just randomly guessed at Red Guardian or Taskmaster, but I think they could have made that guess before these breakdowns. There's a role for a female spy type in the movie, and there's a couple of others. But again, I didn't even write them down because they're so generic that it's really hard to get any details. You talk about Marvel being aware of the news cycle. It appears that we're not going to get character rundowns anymore with any detail after reading this one. Is that how it looks to you?
Thanks, that hashtag, guys.
Okay, that's all we've got to say. I'd like to talk about it more, but there really is nothing to glean from these, right?
Yeah, I mean, it totally depends. I mean, like the CW, when they send out their casting breakdowns and stuff, they actually like name who the character is in the breakdown, so you know what characters are coming up in the coming seasons. And then Marvel used to use like code names or something, like sharing the first initial or the initials were the same, and now it's just totally the most obscure thing they could find. Male, 40s, excited, like, okay.
Well, when they did like Frank Castle for Daredevil, I don't know if this one was one, but like if they had given one back then, they were doing things like, oh, this is a character, character named Phil, right? They would just like take the like opening phonetic like thing, like Frank would become Phil, or if they're casting Jessica Jones, it would be like Jennifer would be the name, and so you'd kind of like play that game. And they actually, like, Hashtag Show did a great job, like Carl Malice as the Doc and Jessica Jones too. They totally nailed that far before anybody knew what was going to happen there because they were able to, like, decipher those. But it does seem like over time that they're getting less and less and less specific with those details. So,
yeah, I think we saw that with Daredevil Season 3 where the FBI agent breakdowns, it was Bullseye. And they had gone, and it was like, well, we think it might be Sin Eater.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They kind of missed. I did see somebody, like, on Twitter, like, not calling anybody out, but it was just kind of like, I thought we were supposed to get a Sin Eater character in Season 3. So people remember that, but I think around that point is when, yeah, FBI agent number 2 was actually Bullseye.
So a minute ago, I said that when you talk a big game, you got to take the criticism. So I'm going to take the criticism. Venom made a heck of a lot of money in China. And it really bums me out, but it did. It made like more money than any other solo superhero movie ever in the history of China. I would like to, at this point, thank the people of China for keeping both Transformers and the Venom movies alive. I just think it's safe to say that my movie tastes and that of the general Chinese public are apparently not very similar because movies that I really hate make lots and lots of money over there. But it has changed things. Last week I was talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp. This movie is now ahead of Ant-Man and the Wasp in the international tally. I will note that if you take the worldwide gross, there is still a chance that Venom will make less money than all 6 previous Spider-Man movies, which you would hope. Venom's a smaller property than that. But Sony is still not making superior money on Venom that it did to the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which they canceled. I just assume it's cheaper to make.
But they did still get 2 out of it. So, I mean, it's safe to say Venom's getting a sequel.
Yeah, it's going to get a sequel.
And depending on the sequel, I mean, please don't waste Woody Harrelson, man.
You mean Sideshow Bob?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of sort of already did waste him. But, I mean, if they use him right, I mean, I think in a much better role. I mean, if it's Venom versus Carnage, I think that would be a much more enjoyable movie than what we got. I don't know, hopefully. I guess maybe I'm just hoping instead of actually thinking it'll be better.
To be fair, I don't think you still haven't seen Venom, have you? Oh, you did.
Have.
Okay.
I have, yes.
Rhiannon, do you have any thoughts on the certitude now that we have that you're going to see Venom 2?
I enjoyed Venom, guys. So and I think the first movie in all of these series is so hard. Doing a creation story and everything, it's just awkward. So the second movie has got to be better.
It can't be worse.
I showed Bob.
Only up from here. Yeah, I mean, they did kind of have a challenge. There's not really... I mean, how are you going to have a Venom origin without Spider-Man and without Black Suit Spider-Man and kind of that Secret Wars, the original Secret Wars, where Peter got the symbiote. It's difficult. So you got to at least applaud them for being creative with it. It's almost kind of like a Last Jedi type setup. With Venom, I kind of feel like the anti-Rian Johnson crew a little bit. It strayed too far from what I kind of expected. So I think that's my biggest criticism. But, I mean, it's pretty objectively bad.
My mind immediately goes to what superhero movie has gotten better? Like, is there a movie that had a pretty crummy start that I really liked the sequel? Is what I try to think of in my head. The only thing that comes to mind quickly is the Thor movies.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, Ragnarok, I think everybody agrees, was much better than the first 2.
And even then, you still hated it.
I didn't hate it, man. I
You don't like it?
I don't love it as much as you do.
I love it. It's one of the best.
I know. So, but my thought is, that's what I really want to see him do. Okay, if we're going to have Venom, let's not bring Ruben Fleischer back. I don't think the directing was incredible. Like, I would love to see somebody with a little more interesting, take on the character come in and do it. I would like to see some kind of change up. I would hope, here's my real concern. I want Sony to go, hey, we got away with that. Let's go make it better. Well, it'll be really disappointing if Sony goes, hey, that did really well. Let's repeat everything that we did last time. Because if Venom 2 is just Venom 1 reheated, I don't think people are going to see it at the same amount. I don't know. Maybe, maybe the international box office will save its bacon again. They liked those Transformer movies. I just would like to see something different.
We should give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess. Morbius could be very good. I mean, with the exception of Suicide Squad, Jared Leto's a pretty damn good actor. And Suicide Squad wasn't his fault whatsoever.
I think it was partially his fault. But, yeah.
Well, I don't know. He took the what do you call it, the method acting or the method surrounding it a little bit too far with the rats or animal body parts or whatever the hell he did. But I don't think, I mean, it wasn't his decision to slap, a damaged tattoo on his forehead. I don't think that was his decision.
Yeah, I guess I heard the same thing for Venom 1. Tom Hardy is such a great actor there's no way that Tom Hardy will make a movie that's not great because Tom Hardy is so great.
Who the hell said that? I mean, Tom Hardy's best when he does it.
Well, Coy Jandro over at Collider Heroes was one that very specifically said it. And we're going to call out names.
What movies has Tom Hardy been good in where he's actually talked? I mean, even what, The Dark Knight Rises, or what was the third one? Exactly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean,
it was very excellent.
He didn't talk that much as Bane. And it was palatable. I mean, Mad Max was good, but it wasn't really Tom Hardy. It's not like he's like, I don't know. He's not like the world's best actor by any means.
Just for the record, if you are at Tom Hardy is the best forever or whatever Twitter handles there are, send your hate mail to at Adam Barnhart because this is one more fan base.
When do I get my soapbox moment on? Because I got about half hour planned. I need my soapbox to talk about these People's Choice Awards.
All right, I won't even try. It's going to get so sad. We might as well do something funny. So, Adam, what do you think about the People's Choice Awards? Lots of Marvel winners.
But if Marvel didn't win it, guess who won it? Shadowhunters. I swear to God that every single award besides Nicki Minaj won twice.
So, Adam, obviously you missed the Winona Earp win.
They didn't even broadcast that.
And they beat Shadowhunters.
They did it during commercial break.
What?
And they came back and they said, the little blurb pops up on TV. Oh, by the way, Winona Earp won like best sci-fi show, and they gave a shot of the cast just waving at the camera from their table. It was funny.
Whoa, hold the phone. You watched this live?
I watched it live.
Yeah. Oh, you probably had to cover it, right?
I had to cover it, yeah.
Is it for your new job?
Yeah, I was pumping out articles left and right. But the point is, thank goodness fans don't vote for the Oscars or the Emmys or any awards that actually matter. Right? People's choice. The people make the decision. There's no way in hell Shadowhunters was the best TV show of 2018. There's no way in hell.
To be fair, there are a lot of things that people choose that they seem to have been doing a bad job of choosing in recent years. Just saying.
Democracy seems like a horrible idea. Just saying.
Let's make Kevin Feige the king of the country and just be done with it, okay?
So that's my little... But to be fair, also, 50 Shades Free also was a finalist for Best Movie of the Year. So... Right. It was Infinity War, Black Panther, Incredibles 2, and 50 Shades Freed, I think.
Oh. I've got to stop doing facial responses because that's really not great podcast material.
That's where we need sound effects, like a sound effects board, like Rhiannon's Wah Wah, or the dude on the Crazy Irish show on Parks and Rec. I don't know.
Yeah, like the old like awooga sound for like your eyes bulging out your head. Awooga.
Right.
Cookie Crisps.
Okay, so best movie went to
Infinity War, yes. And they actually had people there to collect the award.
That's exciting. Who was it?
ScarJo and Denai Guerrera and Pom Klementieff.
And Denai won
she
her
won
own award,
Action
right?
Star of the Year, and ScarJo won Female Actress of the Year, Female Star of the Year. And Chadwick Boseman won Male of the Year. And
not Male of the Year, Male Actor of the Year.
Male,
he isn't just generally the best man on the
planet. No. Sexiest Man Alive, however, went to... Okay, it wasn't a People's Choice Award, but...
Idris
Sexiest
Elba.
Man Alive. Idris Elba.
So yeah, Marvel's winning stuff all over the place.
About how 2018 was going, I figured we'd get someone worse than Blake Shelton, right? I'm like, oh man, this year's going to be bad.
So along these lines, also Marvel put up a new For Your Consideration page for Infinity War for the Oscars, and they're pushing Infinity War for like 11 categories. It's interesting. Most of them are technical, like sound design and visual effects and costume and all that stuff. But they're actually pushing the Russos for Best Director, which I thought is smart. I think it really is an incredible accomplishment, the way that they balance so many characters and stories and stuff. I'd love to see the Russos get a nom for directing. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Coogler's more likely, but it's interesting.
You know what? I bet you Black Panther at least gets nominated for Best Picture. I think they'll get a nomination.
I think so too. I think it would be even better if they hadn't put the movie out in February, but
when do the nominations come out? I'm Googling. I'm not even trusting you guys to know this.
It'll be like 5 a.m. like January 20th. That's my prediction. Let's see how close I am.
That's like the week of the Oscars, isn't it? It's like the week of...
So the Oscars are on February 24th. So I think Caleb is close to being right. I don't see... It didn't come up in like the first 5 words when I Googled, and that's my attention span.
I'm just going to claim it as a victory, and if it's wrong, don't add us. I want to be right. So, moving on to our next bit of news.
Right after you did your little tangent about taking her on the chin.
Yeah, taking on the chin. Exactly. Hey, man, do as I say, not as I do. A little bit of tiny Captain Marvel news this week. The Captain Marvel preview comic came out, and apparently the reason Nick Fury is waiting for to page Carol is because she is his last resort, and he only wants to kind of break in case of emergency. Feige has said that the Kelly Sue DeConnick run of Captain Marvel will be their main inspiration, and also the movie will take place in 1995 specifically. Any of that interesting to you guys?
Were you going to talk about the same piece of info in the same interview as the Kelly Sue DeConnick stuff?
Oh, I must have missed it. Go for it.
Oh, the Eternals is for sure happening. That was another confirmed thing. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something about how he's excited to do Eternals or
yeah, I do have that. Sorry.
He likes that I don't know what the Eternals are.
Yes, correct.
He likes the idea of bringing a property that people don't really know.
But he said they're doing it, though, right? There was something in there where...
Yeah. Yeah, like, they were just talking about it as if it was a known sure thing.
And I do like his comment. I mean, he basically said, Guardians was that way. Nobody knew what that was, and that was very successful for us. I forget this, and I know I shouldn't, but I heard somebody this week make a really smart comment that nobody really knew who Iron Man was when they made it. I mean, that sounds crazy to us now, but the vast majority of the American public didn't know, Iron Man from Drax the Destroyer when they first started working on production of that. And so the idea that this is something that's unknown shouldn't surprise us, and they have proven that unknown is good for Marvel Studios. Because there's no weight, like if anything, the question is going to be, is X-Men 2 known for Feige to do? I'm sure that's a topic we can talk about like in the future, but the fact that Eternals is not known, I think, is an advantage to them, that they can make what they want of it and they don't have to worry about expectations, as we talked about last week. So, also, I made it through that Neil Gaiman run, Adam, and they still haven't gone to space. All the stuff is on Earth. Yeah, I don't know why people keep calling it cosmic, because it really isn't. But so back to that Captain Marvel news. Did you guys find anything interesting out of any of that stuff?
These Prelude comics are hot and cold. I mean, Infinity War had nothing in their Prelude at all. But now this actually has some content. Like both of the Guardians 2 Preludes were Guardians 1 in comic form. So I like it when they do that, when they put a little something in there. It feels like it's worth at least $3.99 or $4.99 or whatever the hell comics are nowadays.
No, man. I did it for Infinity War. Never again. You're not stealing my money just to give me a recap of the last movie I watched.
I like the idea. I like the concept. But, yeah. I don't expect to see much there.
If they are going to use the DeConnick run, we probably should do our book reading club again. That kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, but Partially because that was a very not listened to episode. So if you really like the book club, let us know, listeners, because it seems like you didn't really listen to that episode very much at all. The other thing I thought was kind of dumb about this idea that like Nick Fury was keeping the Marvel buzzer until like the worst possible moment. Why was this the worst moment? Like, why does he know in the instant that he started to feel the snap that he's got to call her, but when aliens were pouring out of the sky, he didn't have to call her? Like, I don't really understand that. Does that make sense to you, or is that just kind of like...
No, yeah, no, totally on board. How did he know this was the one and not aliens or a bunch of Ultron machines, you know? I wonder maybe they'll explain it and there was some reason why she was unavailable, or maybe he did press the button then and she's incapacitated or something. But if they don't explain that, yeah, that'll be kind of weird.
They'll get AT&T or somebody to sponsor them, and then they'll blame it on the other company. Like, AT&T gives them $1 million and be like, well, I sent the message up with the alien invasion, but Sprint dropped my text.
Nice.
All right, a couple other quick things. We hit the Eternals things. The only thing I have left, I saw an article today that Sebastian Stan claims that he doesn't really know if he's in Avengers 4 or not. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, totally. I think, well, one, I think they all know how important it is not to share any of those details. And, two, they, I thought it was you that pointed this out on Twitter. They do, like, intentionally hide things from all of the actors and have them film fake scenes and stuff. So, maybe he filmed some scenes that he thought were fake.
Well, that's what I put on Twitter, was like, at this point, it's almost like this weird psychological, like terrorism that they're doing to the actors, where they're like, you don't know what's real. I know I filmed that scene, but is that a real scene? What's going on? Did I even really do that? Did I get paid for this? Or did I not? You know, like, I would imagine they're so, like, confused at this point.
Like, if they filmed stuff, but it doesn't actually end up on screen, they still had to work the same amount. Like, do they get paid? Adam, go do investigative journalism.
I'm sure none of them are hurting for pay, but...
I mean, he's probably in it, but someone somewhere said that the people that didn't get as much screen time in Infinity War is going to get the most of the screen time in Avengers 4, right? I guess I'm kind of just looking into it since, I mean, how many lines did Chris Evans even have in Infinity War? Like 10? So, I mean, I guess I've just been assuming this is going to be essentially Cap 3.5 or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be mostly focused on him and Iron Man. But
yeah, I think when you look at those things, though, like, it really does feel like Bucky could be the odd man out, because Bucky was not really in Infinity War much to speak of, and then he gets snapped. Like, most of the people that got snapped had pretty significant parts in Infinity War, but he's the one guy, like, he has one scene where Black Panther's like, get ready, we're going to fight. And then he picks up Rocket and spins him around, and then he gets snapped, you know? Like, that's basically the movie for him, so.
But that's about all there is of Black Panther, too.
Right.
That's true.
That's the thing. I mean, they're going to have even more characters in Avengers 4, like Wasp is confirmed for Avengers 4, right? And is it Valkyrie? Tessa Thompson was on set or something, or am I making that up?
I feel like I've heard that, but I'm not sure.
I guess it's so confusing now. I just like assume coming. We have a whole group of Asgardians still out there, and then a whole load of off-screen characters. You know, like Ned and Aunt May.
Yeah, it's also really hard because sometimes news outlets just get it wrong. Like, I don't know if you guys remember. They started, like, Just Jared or somebody had shots from the Ant-Man and the Wasp set. So everyone's like, oh, confirmation that Ant-Man is in Infinity War. And I remember, like, I several times was like, I don't think he is. And everyone on Twitter's like, oh yeah, he definitely is. I saw the photos. And sure enough, he's not, like these, those of us in the esteemed comic journalism business occasionally get these things wrong. So,
but not us.
But not us. And if we did, don't talk to us about it, all right?
Yeah. Our Pulitzer's in the mail, right?
Sure.
Gotta be.
All right. That's all I've got for the news. Did you guys have anything else?
No, I should go probably grab a beer before we get started on our main topic, though.
Oh, yeah. It's wake time.
All
right. It's super a bummer, but we felt like, there's no way we couldn't do this as our conversation. After 95 years, we lost Stan Lee this week, and we're going to try to talk about it without, like, breaking into tears.
I have tissues for you guys.
Already the Kleenexes are there. I told our 8-year-old today, she watched Iron Man last week, and I had to explain who Stan Lee was. So then today I had to tell her that he passed, and, like, she started crying because that's the way she is. And she's like, but he was so funny. We need him. And I was like, yeah, I know. I kind of feel that way, too.
That's what grown-ups everywhere felt like.
So, yeah, let's start with, I'll try an easy one. Did you guys ever get to meet him, either of you, or be in the same room?
No,
do a con or anything?
I regret it, because I think the second to last con he ever did was C2E2 last year. And I kept walking by the line, and the line was huge. There had to be 1,000 people in line at any given time. But, even then, he was 94 and he was still doing conventions and stuff. It's miraculous, man.
Yeah, so I saw him just a little over a year ago. That's the main reason I went to Hasbro's HasCon, is they brought him in for that. And, I wasn't close to him. I was in basically the arena where the Providence College basketball and the Providence Bruins hockey team plays. They had chairs out on the floor, but, I was 30, 40 yards away from him at least. But it was kind of amazing. Like, I could tell that he had sort of rehearsed pieces that he would kind of redo in his brain. I could tell there were certain questions that he couldn't process as well. But he was still really funny and really charming and really, like, on the spot. And it was amazing to me that he was still as capable of doing what he was. Like, the nice thing, I think, is... I don't know. I know there was lots of rumors and stuff, and I really don't want to get into all that. But, like, at least externally, it seemed like he did not lose his sharpness. Like, we never got to a point where he was incapable of doing the cameos, Like, he still had sort of the energy to do that until he died, and I thought that was kind of cool. Rian, I'm sorry, I jumped in. Did you ever get the chance to see Stan in person?
No. I was at cons where he was, but I got into this so late. It's not like I idolized him forever, and I don't know. I just felt like if he had limited number of people that he could take a picture with, I didn't want to take a slot away from somebody like you guys that, like, for years and years may have wanted to. It just didn't feel like my place. I think that's the only thing in the, like, getting into comics late and everything is, like, the picture with Stan Lee was not my place. And I didn't want to take a place from somebody else. Because, like, every appearance he made and everything seemed like the last time. Like, it always... you guys know. We, all of you had trauma that every time his name came up in the news alerts, it was going to be this news.
Yeah, and there was that weird period about a year ago where we got these weird things like he was like billed as like his last appearance in New York or whatever. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's there was a lot of build up like that he was making his last appearances in places and everything, and I didn't go to any of his panels or anything like that, but And I kind of thought that, like, when he went, I mean, I think it was a very lack of drama. Like, there was no news that he went to the hospital. There was no news that he was in critical condition. It was just like, he was gone. There was something very clean about that.
There's been a lot of retrospectives and stuff about Stan in the last couple days. We're recording on Wednesday as we usually do, so he passed away about 48 hours ago. As you guys have looked through it and watched some of the videos, read the articles, what do you feel like is the thing that you take out as the thing you want to remember most about Stan and kind of what he did?
I think some of our friends have posted just those snippets that he did in the back of comics of, like, Stan's soapbox. And I think that's a nice way in this day and age to remember him. And those, yeah, there's the legacy of what he's created, but there's also the legacy of what he said and how he wasn't afraid to come out and say, like, yes, the stuff I'm doing, it's to send a message. Yes, it's political. Yes, it's, got a moral lesson. And don't you dare forget that. Or don't you dare try to pretend that isn't the case.
Right. And that's you always see, you guys know how Twitter is in 2018, and it's made comics great again and stuff like that. But it's always been that way since the characters, were started. And I'm almost thankful that those soapboxes started to resurface again, because, those were, late 60s, early 70s when those started coming out. And it's been there the whole time. Even past that, even past all the creations he helped create, we're talking probably 200 plus characters for Marvel. Every single big one. The X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. Most of Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery, Galactus, Doctor Doom, the Inhumans, all these characters. On top of that, as a digital media person and as a marketer by trade, he's probably one of the best marketers to ever live, in a sense, because he always believed in his product and always peddled his product and always pushed his product. And even past that, he built his own brand out of being, he stopped working in Marvel maybe in the mid-70s, and since then he was just Stan Lee. He built his own brand, and since, before, can you remember liking comics before movies and stuff were out? It wasn't like this luxurious, cool thing. It was nerdy as hell and geeky and all that stuff. And even then, Stan managed to almost make it sexy of sort. There's a pretty good book. Maybe I have it back there. It's like Marvel Comics Untold or something like that. It kind of takes through the journey through Timely Comics and Martin Goodman and through Stan and Jack and pretty much the present day. And somehow even when comics were made for, the ragtag teens and misfits and outsiders and stuff like that, Stan still got invited to college campuses to talk about superheroes. There was always kind of that sexiness to it, So, at the end of the day, there's not as many marketers who could market the products as well as Stan could.
Yeah, and he always seemed to have, I don't know how much he pushed into other avenues like television and film and video games, but he was certainly game for it, right? Like, every time that they had an opportunity to try something new with his characters, he was there to, like, do the cameo or do the voice or whatever. Like, it seemed like nobody ever had to twist his arm when Lego Marvel Superheroes called and like, hey, Stan, can you do a voiceover for this video game? He was always like, yeah, sure. Like, he always liked his characters given new avenues to be shared. And I think that takes some vision. I can think of some other people, particularly like some of these 80s personalities from like the dark, like, Alan Moore and I can't think of other names off the top of my head, but Daredevil guy, Frank Miller, like, some of these like darker and broody guys that are always like critiquing and being like negative about, oh, my character's being sort of twisted and I don't like the way this is done and it's just a money grab and the purity of the comics. And Stan was just never that guy. He was like, hey, if this is a way for more people to enjoy it, and even if you're going to have to tweak it and adapt it, like, he wanted it to be shared with people. He was very much a populist that way, and I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, Rhiannon, like what you said, I mean, that was really the thing that stuck out to me is that, you know, and this stuff's hard because I'm sure if you went back and you looked at the way, say, Stan introduced Falcon or the way that he dealt with the civil rights movement in the X-Men comics or didn't do with it. And I know there's lots of debate and there's smarter people than me, and I'm sure he didn't do it perfectly. But you read those soapboxes and you see the general tenor of these comics, which are accept people who are different than you. Like, this is a white dude in the mid-1960s. There were a lot of people like Stan that were not going anywhere close to that kind of stuff. And in his comics, he always wanted to say, treat people kindly, treat people with respect. You know, like, for me, the X-Men, I think it's fascinating. The X-Men resonated for some people with civil rights movement, but then resonated again 30 years later with the LGBTQ community, right? And like some of their issues about coming out as a mutant versus coming out as gay. Like, I don't think it's a mistake that material resonated with a new generation and a new challenge, because I think Stan always believed that comics should teach people to be accepting and kind towards other people. And I don't think it's too much to give him credit for that, because I think it would have been really easy in his day and age to not care about those things, and he did. And I think that's kind of what made him cool. Let's talk about creations for a minute. Adam, you did a good article over at comicbook.com about all the different characters that Stan helped create. I mean, you had a list of over 100 of them in the Marvel Universe. Do you guys have a favorite character that Stan created?
Good question. I mean, when it comes to comics, I'm almost a hipster in the sense that I kind of gravitate towards the characters that are lesser known and the more niche characters. But I mean, he created, most Doctor Strange in the Doctor Strange mythos. So I'd probably say, you guys know I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan, and the X-Men, while he did create the original 5, most of, Jean Grey and Cyclops, of course, were his, or at least co-created with Jack Kirby. I would probably say Strange. Can't go wrong with Groot. You know, he did create Groot back when Groot was a villain. Hawkeye, you can't go wrong with Hawkeye, man. If I had to choose one, I guess it'd probably be Strange.
I mean, if I'm having to choose one, I hate to be so like consistently the same and all that, but Daredevil. He created Daredevil, right? It was him and okay. I was like, oh my god, watch my hot take be awful, like it usually is. No. But, like, that character... if you look at all of his characters, what I think draws people to them, like you were saying, they're flawed. You know, he didn't create your Superman, your type characters. He created your flawed characters that managed to do amazing things despite being different in some way. And I, y'all know I love Daredevil, and yeah, that's an easy one for me.
That predated most of his creations too. I think Daredevil 1 was like 1961. Or it was 63. So it was still super early.
Marvel wanted a character in response to Batman.
It's maybe not my favorite character he made, but the character I think that like represents what he did the most is Spider-Man for me. Like, as we talked about in the pod, I find it weird, but I do think I'm the most Spidey guy of the three of us. And the thing is, like, to me, Spider-Man was the distillation of, like, everything he did well. Like, all the science-y stuff from, like, Fantastic Four to Iron Man to Hulk, that's there with Peter. The radiation causing superpowers. But also, like, I even think about Daredevil as one of those characters that you always like more when things aren't going well for him. But nobody has worse luck than Spider-Man, right? Like, that's the thing, is that classic Parker luck. Like, Spider-Man works when his life is not working the way it's supposed to. And that he's kind of the nerd, he's picked on, the people at school bully him, that plays into a lot of the themes that he did. And so, to me, Spider-Man is the most that any character in comics is a mirror. Like, so many people look at Spidey and they go, oh, he's me. And it's almost miraculous, the number of people who identify with, oh, I feel like I'm Spider-Man. And I think that's what Stan did really well, is to help us feel like superheroes were like us. And that's why I think Spider-Man is his ultimate invention, because it's the character that we most connect with. And to this day, it's the one kids connect with, right? Like, walking around my neighborhood on Halloween night, there was more Spider-Man than any other superhero, because it's still like that thing that sells $1 billion a year in merchandising, because for some reason kids see that costume, they see that character, and they go, oh, that's me. And they've done it consistently now for 55 years or whatever. And that's amazing. Like, it's so cool. There's other characters that people like, but like, people like Batman, but I don't know how people feel like they are Batman, right? But Spider-Man is that character that everybody goes like, oh, I see myself in him. And how Stan created that, obviously with Steve Ditko. I mean, he deserves that credit as well. Like, I think that's his legacy. I mean, Spider-Man is the thing he did that'll last forever. So
that's crazy to think about. What other person on this planet has created as many things that will outlive all of us? Like Tesla or Alexander Graham Bell or Thomas Edison. I mean, compare all of their inventions, and I know it's kind of apples to oranges, but I mean, Spider-Man's going to be around much longer than any of us are alive. You combine that with Hulk and with an Iron Man and with the 100 other characters he made. What the biggest characters he did, pretty much everyone besides Cap.
And he wrote Cap really early, too.
Right.
Like, from the first Cap, before they brought him back in the 60s. So,
he was made, essentially, editor-in-chief at 19 years old. Isn't that crazy? That's nuts.
I would say, I've been thinking this week, I don't like being too hyperbolic, but the question I've been toying with is he the most significant storyteller of the 20th century? Like, I think the Tolkien folks, or, like, I love C.S. Lewis, like, I'm a big Lewis guy, but, like, I think if you did a top 5, like, the storytellers of the 20th century, Lee's got to be up in there. And I think it's possible, high art isn't always the art that's remembered. It's possible that 200 years from now, Stan Lee will be the most famous author of our century. As crazy as that sounds to, like, the literature people, I think there's a possibility.
That's kind of the feeling I get from it too. I guess novelists don't, I don't know, at least to me, I just assume, like a Stephen King kind of looks down upon comic book writers, even though more and more novelists are starting to write comic books. Who's the guy
and vice
who wrote?
versa. Like,
Right.
Neil Gaiman has done pretty well as a novelist after he moved there from comic books.
Right, like the Black Bolt writer, Saladin Ahmed.
Yeah.
Now he's writing for TV. The guy that's doing this Iron Fist digital comic was a novelist. So I think it's getting better, but it almost just seems like it's kind of not the same. It almost seems like MLB and minor league type setup. To me, it's clear there are two different ways to tell stories, and one's not better than the other. I don't know. I guess I just always kind of got that assumption from looking from the outside in. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Charles Soule just dropped a novel, didn't he?
He's had one out a while. Oracle Year. I saw it in a thrift shop this past weekend.
And you didn't buy it?
I was doing a lot of walking around and I didn't want to carry it. But the thrift shops nearby, they had Kristen Ritter's novel and Charles Soule's novel. So I started to wonder whose collection this was.
So Stan also, obviously, most directly to what we talk about on this podcast, did all those cameos. You know, people have had the videos out this week of kind of putting all the cameos together. Do you guys have a favorite Stan Lee cameo?
I mean, I really enjoyed his Thor Ragnarok one. I think that was one of the most humorous ones. Either that or the strip club in Deadpool 2. Or Deadpool, excuse me.
I'm going to go with Mallrats.
Oh, outside the box.
Deep cut.
Yeah, holy cow.
Well, I mean, but I would have to say that's like the first time I ever heard about Stan Lee. I mean, I thought it was so cool that this movie, like, I knew he was a very, I don't know, like, I knew he was a legend. I knew he was, like, a big deal. I knew it was a very big deal that he was in that movie. But it was, like, my introduction to Stan Lee.
I think my favorite is Guardians 2. I mean, for a long time there was this idea that maybe Stan was a watcher. And I like that it created, like, a unified theory of the Stan cameos. And it sort of, like, explains in-universe why he shows up in different places. And so it kind of validates the fact that he's there. It's not just like a kind of funny thing or just like a cute thing, but actually like makes sense in canon, so to speak, you know? So like, I don't know. That's what one of my faves.
See, we gotta listen back to the pre-Guardians 2 pods because I'm pretty sure I dropped that theory before that, saying how Stan was the same character in every
Hey man, if you want to listen to those old pods, good luck.
No, that's why I suggested it. You find
the clip and I'll make a little video clip of it. And you can spread it around.
No, but then I'd get yelled at like the Ant-Man post-credit thing.
Along the lines of the cameos, I know, Rhiannon, you've talked about your theory on this. We think that, I believe I've heard that Captain Marvel and Avengers 4 were in the can. So that those are probably his last two cameos. How do they handle this? Do they try to continue that tradition? How would you, like, some people have said, like, CGI Stan. Would that feel uncomfortable for you? Is there somebody else to put in there as the new Stan? Like, what's your thoughts?
I mean, they didn't want to touch, CGI and Carrie Fisher, so I'm not sure they would want to do a digital Stan or not. I'm totally on board with Rhiannon's theory, though.
Well, I mean, not the theory that you guys are referring to, but I think they recorded, I mean, they talk about he recorded, like, several cameos ahead of time. Like, he would go to Atlanta and film, like, 5 cameos at once. But didn't one of the directors once say that they filmed Stan just doing a bunch of different random cameos that could be used in anything?
I don't remember that, but I feel like I read somewhere that they did have him sit down to get enough footage that they could do like a facial recreation if they wanted. I do already this week, and Adam, maybe you know the exact quote, Feige was asked about it, and he kind of just said, like, we have a plan, but I wouldn't tell you because Stan likes surprising people. If Stan before he died basically said, like, I'd love you to recreate me digitally, like, I'd be cool with it. Like, it's his likeness, and if he signed off on it, given the kind of showman that he was, if, like, there's a video of him, like, talking on camera and it's like, listen, I love to live forever, that would be cool, go ahead and use me, like, then I'd be okay with it. I don't know, maybe other people wouldn't like it, but if Stan was up for it, and I could almost see him kind of doing it, because he was just such a ham, you know?
Yeah. You say it like that, I'd be on board with that. I don't know. I just don't want the decision to come from elsewhere. You know, there's plenty of people in that camp that have already talked about doing stuff in terms of characters and IP and things of that nature. You know, it almost feels dirty if Stan didn't give his blessing ahead of time. Which, like you said, I mean, that's totally something he could or he would have done.
And I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the news reports. I mean, but, like, other than the fact that he was 95 years old, and anybody at 95 years old is, in a delicate health, was there a known, like, illness or anything? Like, did he know? Could they have been preparing because he knew his time was short?
Well, so last Saturday, I mean, he was at home and he met with Roy Thomas, who took over his job as editor-in-chief. And Roy released a statement. It was kind of a peculiar statement because Roy said that by their conversation, Roy had the clear understanding that Stan was ready to leave Earth. So I'm not sure if Stan was sick or if Roy was just being super, super blunt in his statement. But yeah, I mean, there hadn't been any news. I mean, there was one time, like last year, that Stan was rushed to a hospital or was admitted or something like that because of pneumonia or something of that nature. But I don't think there was a terminal illness in the works. Or at least
so
it
it's
wasn't
not
publicized.
like David Bowie, where he knew he was dying for a year and he could prepare a album to be released right after his death. Like, I could see the Stanley equivalent of that being preparing his cameos.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they started doing the cameos, though, 3 or 4 at a time.
Yeah.
And one of the cameos, I think it was Infinity War, they had to delay it because he got sick and he couldn't travel, or they had to move it or something, I forget. He also had a bunch of con conventions that he had to, like, cancel because of health. Like, that's not the same as I have a terminal illness, but when those things start happening and you're 94, 95, I think you start thinking about the end, right? Like,
right. I mean, in this day and age, 95 is one hell of a life, right? Like, that's probably more than enough. As crude as it sounds, it's a good life.
The last question I had was, is there anybody in the Marvel world for you that could pick up this baton? Like, who is sort of the face or the showman that kind of becomes Marvel's lovable figurehead at this point? Is there anybody in your mind? I have one, but I'm interested in your guys' take.
Wait, both of you like hinted at my cameo idea, Rihanna's cameo idea and stuff. I mean, and for
you
those
should say that for the listeners.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, those that haven't heard the several times I've mentioned it, I want it to be Deadpool. I want just like a gratuitous Deadpool appearance in every movie. No reason at all. But okay, but as far as somebody charismatic that's not Deadpool.
Yeah, and not so much even film cameo, but like the person that kind of is the standard bearer is like the Marvel guy, so to speak.
You're talking like the overall Marvel brand, not just like MCU or
yeah, however you want to answer.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, when people say, you know, like a brand ambassador for Marvel, I mean, people would probably almost instantly think of Feige. You know, I mean, since what huge, I mean, name the editors-in-chief of Marvel Comics. You know, after Stan, it was Roy Thomas, and after Roy, it was, I think, Jim Shooter or something. And then, I mean, I can name the last 3 of them, but none of them are even close. I mean, maybe like a guy like Joe Quesada. You know, I mean, he's a pretty big comic name, and he's very close to Stan. I mean, you got Roy Thomas is still alive. There's all sorts of there's all sorts of writers and artists and things of that nature. But in terms of overall Marvelnicity or Marvelicity or whatever you want to call it. Joe's more than an artist and more than a writer. He's a creator. He's chief creative officer still, right? So I would guess, I would say probably Quesada's as close to Stan as we're going to get. Axel Alonso or CB Cebulski still have a ways to go.
Go ahead, Rhiannon. Do you have something you want to say on that?
Yeah, I just, Quesada's who I went to as far as a personality and stuff that associate with the comics, but I think, but he didn't create 100 characters. I think nobody will replace Stan Lee's place in the universe as sort of the grandfather of everything. I think the voice, I think Feige carries on the creative, mastery when it comes to, while Feige may not have created 100 characters, he's brought 100 characters to life in a way that honored what Stan created. But Quesada goes out and he has the fan, he goes to the conventions, he has his Cup of Joe panels. He, I think when it comes to continuing the spirit of what Stan started, and, if anybody was to come out and do a soapbox type thing, I would expect it to be Joe right now. To be somebody that's been there enough and be willing to take whatever heat comes from it. And I think, they all learned from Stan. So while you won't have another person that has his charisma and his creativity and, everything that he did, you can see a little bit of everything that he did in these successors.
Yeah, see, I was thinking, if you want a prolific creator, Brian Michael Bendis is really the... I'm just...
Jesus Christ. All right, see you guys.
I'm just messing with you, Adam. No, I really...
Nope.
I really love that you guys went to Joe, because that's exactly what I've been thinking this week, is Quesada is a guy that worked his way through. He did the creative side. He's done the executive side. He's done the conventions. He has been kind of Stan's handler lately, for lack of a better term, right? He's the guy who often interviews him at the cons and kind of talks to him. And so, yeah, at this point, Quesada's been around long enough and has done enough with the company that when they need an affable, enjoyable person whose personality people like and who's good about talking about comics and had a personal connection with Stan, Joe Quesada is that guy. And I'm sure he would really blush at this mention, but I think it is illustrative that all three of us went there as soon as I kind of asked that question. And I would just say, I would love for Joe to step up into that. I think it would be really cool if every time you need a Marvel guy, Joe kind of do it his own way, but finds a way to kind of have that same spirit of Stan as the showman who always puts Marvel front and center. And I think he could definitely handle that. So, do you guys have anything else on Stan before we wrap the show up?
Just, there was one, I shared it on Twitter. There was a cartoonist that did just a little panel that said, that had Stan going into heaven and the voice of God saying, "You're not so bad at creating universes yourself."
Yeah.
And that is the one thing, that was really, that's the one thing that touched me this week. Because there's tons of remembrance type things going around. That one hit me the hardest.
I think the bow that I wanted to put on this is, I think maybe the best thing Stan ever wrote was that with great power comes great responsibility. And so, if you're like us and you're touched by Stan and his work, just live that way this week. You have privilege and power in your life. You've got your money and your position in people's lives and in families and in workplaces. And that is not just a privilege that you have, but it's a responsibility you have to treat people right. So, if you want to be like Stan and you want to honor his memory, go out and be really responsible people who use that in a way that builds other people up instead of tearing them down. All right. before we all start sobbing uncontrollably, let's go to the mailbag. Last week's episode we had was, Feige mistakes. Love Waffle had a really good bit on there that he thinks Thor is generally Feige's biggest mistake. And he sort of catalogs Thor the Dark World, which, by the way, was, I think, the worst production Marvel ever had. They had Patty Jenkins on it, right? And then she left, and then they brought in Alan Taylor, and then a lot of people hate that movie. And then he points to how even in Avengers movies, Thor really didn't have anything to do for the first couple of those, and basically his theory is that Thor is the character that Feige doesn't get. And the only reason that Thor was as good as he was recently is because Taika Waititi came in and fixed Feige's Thor problem. And since then, Thor's been a lot more usable, and the Russo brothers were able to continue what Waititi set up. And I just thought that was a very insightful, interesting comment. So, thanks to the people on Twitter who are enjoying the Brewster interview. As Rhiannon said, she kind of took those clips and did this kind of videoization thing that we've got, and that's been really good. Thanks for all the likes and ats and all that kind of stuff. 084 was talking about Daredevil 3, and he also felt the connection with the Pulse nightclub shooting that you mentioned, Rhiannon, with all the phones and that scene. Uberco and Eric H. Suggested this pod topic, so thank you for that, guys. And also thank you to Mr. Media for doing a follow Friday. I think that's what hashtag FF means, where he wanted to encourage people to follow us, so thanks a lot. So Michael T. Ford asks, if you had to choose between losing Spidey to Sony's UCM and the UCM movies, joining Spidey in the MCU, which would you rather have happen? What do you think, guys?
I would rather have them join the MCU. That's a no-brainer, isn't it?
So that would be like Venom in the MCU?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a huge Spidey fan, so I would be heartbroken if Tom Holland left. But, if you introduce Venom, I think Venom can make, eventually it would be an awesome Thunderbolts. Or even with their thing about doing the Dark Avengers, I think that'd be killer in there. Plus, I've always wanted them to do a horror aspect of it. They said Doctor Strange was going to kind of straddle that line, but it didn't. So, Morbius in the MCU, it would give us reason to have a Blade and such.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. You can interact with us a lot of ways. Send us messages on Twitter at Marvel News Desk. Also communicate with us via our marvelnewsdesk.com posts each week. If you want to support the show, give us some money over at patreon.com/marvelnewsdesk. You'll get access to our special MCU film ranking episode, as well as our other annual episode that's coming up very soon. Those are available to Patreon supporters only, as well as getting early access to things like our Road to Infinity War Supercut. Like us on Facebook.com/Marvel News Desk. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at watch.marvelnewsdesk.com. Help the show be more visible to others by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. And most importantly, just keep on listening and telling your friends. We appreciate that a lot. Thanks to Tim Cox for our logo. You can find him at Tim V. Cox. And also thanks to Alvin for the theme music. You can find his music on a variety of social media platforms at the Skull School. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week. Bye. A quick programming note. I lied. We won't see you next week. We're taking next week off for Thanksgiving. So have a good time. Those of you who are going to go see your families and all that stuff, be safe and travel well. And we will see you not next week, but in December.